So basically, what happened was I ran out of time to make a video, and so here I am. Uh, you're getting two videos this week, but this isn't gonna be. I don't have enough time to make like a full edited video on something that's coming next week. So here we are doing another one of these rambly rant videos. So there's been this thing on my mind for a while that I find pretty interesting, and it's on the topic of RPGs or role-playing games, and what exactly makes a game or something an RPG element. What does that actually mean? It stands for role-playing game, so your first instinct would be, oh, this is a game where you role play. And that's kind of true. You're on the right track. So essentially, role-playing game comes from Dungeons and Dragons. A lot of things actually come from Dungeons and Dragons, and it's probably something that I should do a video on. It's pretty interesting how many design elements that are so standard now come from one single game, and also a lot of things that are in D&D that don't you don't see as much in video games. So Dungeons and Dragons is a very open, freeform, creative game where you can basically do anything that you want, and that's very fun, and you can get a lot. There's a lot of enjoyment in that, but in order to function as a game, games need rules. And so that's what establishes some kind of logic where you can do better or worse. It adds stakes. Sports would not be as interesting if there was only a vague set of rules, and there was no rules about guidelines about scoring or what counts as so many points, or how you even win the game. So you need some kind of logic for your game. And that's where RPG elements, as they're called, come in. So if I am a dungeon master and I want my player to open a chest and find a sword, a weapon that is better than the one that they have currently. I want to reward them for exploring or for taking the gamble on opening a chest. It could be like a mimic or something. How do I establish that this sword is better than the one that they currently have? And so you basically do that by establishing statistics, attributes to basically everything. So this sword, maybe they were carrying a bronze sword and they pick up a silver sword. The bronze sword has like +5 attack. The silver sword has +10 attack. The logic of the game is not that this sword is more powerful because it's made of silver, literally, compared to the bronze sword. It's more powerful because it has a higher number. And that's kind of the root of RPG elements. You are taking real-world concepts and turning them into abstract numbers, basically. With the important caveat that these numbers are part of the, I'll call it the player-facing logic, i.e., obviously every game is going to be running numbers behind the scenes, just because it's a computer program and it needs that stuff to function. The difference is that made apparent to the player, or is that just something that's going on behind the scenes? So for instance, here's an example of a non-RPG element. Would be the health system in Super Mario Brothers games. So as Mario, as the little mini Mario, you can take one hit and then you die. But if you get a mushroom, you can take 2 hits in addition to growing bigger. You could do this exact same system by, for instance, having a little health pip, and that's at 1. This represents 1 hit point, and then collecting the mushroom or using an item or whatever raises that number to 2. You have 2 little pips. You could do that with no visual change to Mario at all, and it would function basically identically to the way that the traditional Mario health system works. Compare that to lots of other games where your health is represented by some kind of a number. That is taking a real concept like your health or how much endurance you have and turning it into a value that can go up or down numerically. I think that this is important to point out to actually understand the difference between these two approaches, because I think that often RPG elements are thrown into games where they're not really necessary, or at least developers are at risk of implementing them kind of without thought for how they affect the gameplay experience. So for example, I want to compare two games that take these two different approaches. That would be Super Metroid and Castlevania Symphony of the Night. So in Super Metroid, and basically every Metroid game, all of the only real RPG elements are in your health number, like your HP, which is a number. It starts 99 and can tick down. And every capability that Samus has is tied to a literal representation of that thing, i.e. different weapons and suit upgrades and abilities. In Symphony of the Night, a lot of those same ideas are presented to the player as RPG elements. So obviously you have Alucard has different stats. You can collect weapons. You have an inventory where you store them, and then you can equip them, and they change your stats, and they have different properties that are based on dealing different amounts of damage or applying different effects. And all of these things are communicated to the player through numerical values. One of the most important differentiators, I think, between those two experiences is that Symphony of the Night uses an experience system, and you see experience systems now used in tons and tons of games. So what an XP system does of raising an XP bar is that it gives you an objective way to track the strength of your character, whereas in Metroid your strength is only kind of tracked by your own internal skill. It's the difference between avatar strength and player strength. Avatar strength being how strong your character is, player strength being how skilled the player themselves are. So I love Super Metroid. I think that's I think it's a fantastic game. When I played Symphony of the Night, I might have to make a video on that game too, because I have a lot of weird thoughts on that game. When I played Symphony of the Night, I had a very different impression of it. It was, despite the fact that it's always been said that it takes a lot from the Metroid formula in terms of exploration, its approach to those elements is totally different because of the system that it's kind of wrapped into, which is based around avatar strength. What it guarantees is that the more that the player plays the game, kills enemies, collects experience, the stronger they are guaranteed to become. The risk that you run as a designer is that you are kind of handing over a portion of your game to the player by doing this. Hey, it's Tigan, and the original point that I was making right now is came out really garbled and difficult to understand, so I'm going to restate it in better terms. Basically, in Super Metroid, the designers have a very fine control over where the player is, because the progression in that game is gated by what items and abilities you have, because those are what allow you to explore further. So they know that if you're in this area, you at least have these things, because you need this thing to you have XYZ because you needed Z to get here. Whereas in Symphony of the Night, most of the barriers to progress come from combat encounters, like fighting bosses, and a lot of bosses who gate items or who stand in the way of progress. And so the player can take basically one fairly strong weapon and just grind enemies until they level up to the point where they can just take out the boss really easily. So as the designer, the player can be at a certain point in the game and you have no idea what they have access to or don't have access to, unless you gate it behind some kind of item, like the bat power-up or the bat transformation that you need to access a couple different parts of the game. It seems like very few people, I feel like, talk about how big of a difference the RPG elements in Symphony of the Night make, but it makes a huge difference, because it completely changes the way that the game is designed. Instead of having a very delicate control over the player, the designer is now kind of forced to let the player have kind of a more open space to use. And so you're going from a more, you could think of it as a more linear design, to a very more free kind of, you could think of it as like a playground. RPG elements are usually also used now in games that you're kind of meant to play for a while. They implement levels to your account, or in MMOs you'll see, obviously those are stacked with RPG elements, because those are all about investing time, and so having an RPG element gives you something very concrete to work towards, which is this number. It's the basic appeal of number go up. I hope that my description of these two different approaches doesn't, there's no bias towards either one of them. You can totally design a great game with either of these, but I think as a designer, it's your job to examine every single choice that you're making and questioning what the purpose is. What does putting in this, purpose does putting in an RPG element accomplish in the game? How does that change the experience? If we didn't use it, how would that affect the game? And is that something you want? So the next time that you're playing any kind of game and you see the numbers popping up when you hit enemies or something like that, just, consider maybe thinking about why that's there. Not in any kind of critical way, but just it's kind of interesting to get into the nitty-gritty of how really every single system that affects the logic of the game affects the overall experience. So yeah, this has been kind of my my really long ramble. I've got a video coming next week, next Friday. This is just kind of a stopgap to put something out for at the end of the week, like I usually do. So look forward to that. Like, subscribe. I literally woke up today and that Konami E3 video had, it got like 100 views overnight. So if you're new here and you're watching, subscribe and like, and feel free to comment. And I'm genuinely curious to know what other people think about this stuff. So feel free to comment below. Alright, bye.